You now tuned into the hottest podcast in the world, the Stay Woke Podcast, right here on the SonicBreakdown.com.
Welcome back to another Stay Woke Podcast. This is D-Ray Brinson, and you know the Stay Woke Podcast is presented by the SonicBreakdown.com. So thank you for listening to another podcast. Today's podcast is going to be a very interesting movie review, and it's going to be covering the movie Get Out. But let me introduce our special guest today. We got two special guests. We got a returning guest, Uncle David. And then we got Baba Jesse.
What's up out there, folks?
I want to begin by just saying what was your overall impressions of the movie?
I'll start. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a really good movie. Mm-hmm. Just looking at it for the genre that it was supposed to be, I thought he did a good job. I mean, it had the suspense, it was comedy, everything you would want in a horror movie, but it also had some consciousness, which for me made it a little special.
What about you?
Yeah, I was impressed with the movie. I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of the scenes. There was some scary stuff early on, that they threw in there, with, I'm sure anybody listening to this has already seen the movie.
Spoiler alert. So
like when they were driving up to the house and they hit that deer, that was kind of scary.
Foreshadowing, yeah.
Right. It also, had some reflections back on Homeboy's life, with what happened with his mom and stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. So I thought they weaved the story together really well. I was surprised, at the turn of events. I suspected that things weren't going to go the way that they ended up going. So I thought it was very well done. It was a good thriller.
That's why I agree. I would use the word thriller instead of a horror movie, which I saw a lot of reviews and it being advertised as a horror movie, but it wasn't that blood and guts, gory stuff that I see in horror movies. It was a thriller, mystery thriller that was kind of creepy.
Yeah, it was very creepy. The opening scene where Homeboy is walking through this neighborhood trying to get to somebody's house, and he's on his phone, and this car's following him. I'm immediately thinking of Trayvon Martin.
And you're thinking of the actor's name is Lakeith Stanfield, and the character's name was Andrew Logan King. Mm-hmm. That was the character's name, and that beginning was interesting, and it did bring thoughts of that, especially when and I also liked how the fact that they added the humor in to create levity and release some of the tension at certain scenes, like in that beginning, because it was getting tense. Like, oh man, you already know what type of movie it is, and then you see the black guy, and you're thinking in your mind of, like you said, the Trayvon Martin or things of that nature. And then he's like, oh, I'm not having that shit today. I'm going. And he starts walking the other way because in normal movies, that character continues to walk in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you've been to the movies in the neighborhoods, in the hood, and everybody's yelling at the screen, get out of that house. Don't go that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn around. Get away from him. Right? So that was an obvious point where, if it was, your standard thriller, horror movie, where the characters make the stupid move. This is where black folks would be jumping up saying, yo, don't do that. What's wrong with you? You stupid. But he made the right move.
Exactly. And that's, to me, that I like that aspect of it. And it made it that much better.
Yeah. And I think it was that way throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't see one of those, what I call those stupid horror movie decisions being made where,
exactly.
Let's run to the graveyard or let's run this way. Let's get out.
Actually, I disagree. There was one scene.
There was one. Which one?
Hold on. Let me back up before we do that.
Okay.
I do want to introduce that movie was written and directed by Jordan Peele. Some of you might know him from the Key and Peele Show, which is a great series, a nice follow-up for Comedy Central for following up Dave Chappelle Show. I thought they did a really well done really job on that. And then to see him transfer that creative energy into a movie like this, I thought also needed to be noted.
Another thing to note is that he is the first African-American director to have a movie gross over $100 million.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. In his first
3 weeks?
3 weeks or something like that. Right. So, he's going to raise the bar. And it wasn't an obviously black movie either. Right?
And it shows that we can produce successful things if you give us the opportunity. Because he not only, like I said, he directed it, he also wrote it. So that he had his creative footprint all over it, where black directors, actors, writers, screenwriters usually don't get that overall control because they don't have faith in us. Because they think they need to insert certain things in to help the movie gross because it's not going to carry on its own.
Right.
But he's just continuing what's the last few years we've seen. Just
capitalizing. Yeah.
Capitalizing. But the black writers and directors are stepping up more. I mean, they're getting the chance. So we're seeing that it can be done, and they're doing all the genres. It's not just you got
Donald Glover with Atlanta. You have I can't think of her name for Insecure on HBO. So yeah, there's a lot of them out there. But I do want to go back to what we were saying because I don't want to forget that thought.
Oh yeah, that plot
scene.
about which one was it? Yeah.
For me, let me tell you what mine was. The hypnosis.
Oh no, not mine. Well,
like
yes,
it's like
yes.
he knew
Like
he couldn't sleep, and he
two-
go downstairs and and he's gonna sit there and start talking to her. I was like, no,
I forgot that part. There's two.
Don't do that.
It was that one. And when him and his girlfriend were on the beach, and he was talking, and he told her that the mother hypnotized him, and he's like, "We got to leave."
Yeah.
At that point, I don't care what she says or what she does. And your instincts are telling you need to leave. If she, like he said in the beginning, either you come with me or I'm going. He should have stuck with that. That's all. That was the only part and the other hypnotizing because he called it. Yeah. He said, "Oh, you're trying to hypnotize me," or like he alluded to it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did his own advice and leave.
I thought, the hypnosis scene, that's the thing where I could see, okay, it wasn't the smartest thing, but it wasn't those typical.
Yeah, it wasn't the obvious thing. I hear some noise. Because you kind of like, okay, I'm going to go up there and look.
I can deal with this. She can't hypnotize me. I can deal with this. And the scene, what are you saying? When he was saying something's wrong, blah, blah, I need to get out of here. He should have left. I agree with that. But again, stupid. That was just, it was man in love kind of thing. He's like, he's trying to be nice with the family. I know something's wrong. He didn't know exactly what was wrong and what was happening.
Well, he had been pre-warned, right? His homeboy told him, man, don't be going up there.
Right.
Yeah, in the beginning. He said, no, man, that don't sound right.
And that was a lot of the thriller and suspense for me. It's like, even from the very start, something's wrong, but you didn't know what. Like you said, the ending, you didn't quite... I didn't know it was going to take that kind of a twist. Then, the whole with the lobotomies and
all that stuff
selling body parts. I didn't know it was going to go to all of that. But I don't see the point where it was like, I definitely got to get out of here any earlier or that everything's haywire here. Because he was still sort of kind of figuring out what's going, from my memory anyway. He hadn't quite connected all the pieces. So it wasn't like, I'm talking about the stupid stuff where... the house is haunted. You're hearing noises upstairs. Let's go do that. Yeah, let's go check it out.
Now, a couple of things. When he got to the house, and the brother, right, is weird.
Oh, you're talking about Lakeith Stanfield. That's again the actor's name, but I think he did a great job. I want to take a note. I think he did a great job because there are so many ways he could have played that role, and it'd been cheesy. It could have been. Too creepy. It was right on that border of creepy, but like it's not creepy enough where you can instantly say like you said, those scenes where it's like if he does it wrong, it's like at that point he has to leave.
Well, the thing,
but he played it just enough where it's like
what's wrong with this brother?
Where you just hear
Now, when they threw him in there and he was kind of a diversion, right? Because he was like, okay, maybe this is the guy. Right, that we got to look out for because he's a little whacked, right? So I was like looking at him and thinking, okay, this is where the thing's coming from. There's
a scene or there's a line that he says when they two interact, and the lady, I don't remember her name, comes up to Lakeith Stanfield's character, and he's like, "What's Chris?" He's like, "Chris just was telling me how comfortable he feels just with my presence." To me, that's like unspoken code. Like we know, well, for me, I'll put it this way. I'll put it for me. If you're in a situation like that and you see another brother, you feel comfortable. You're like, okay, let me go talk to him.
Yeah. Now,
but you never speak. You never acknowledge it and say like, you make me feel comfortable.
Right.
Well, you just know it. I mean,
exactly.
Know it.
And so like that to me was so like that was so creepy.
But what was real creepy though? The two servants.
Georgina and Walter.
Right.
Hey, she did such a good job.
Because that they seemed like they, it almost seemed like that they were on some kind of plantation or something. Right. Because they were, the field hands. Right. She was working in the house. Right. For these white folks. And now you don't know that this is not the first time they've had a black guest. Right. At the beginning. Right. You're just figuring, okay, she's coming home with the black boyfriend for the first time. And the family's kind of tripping about this. And the servants are tripping too, because it's like, hey, how come he gets to be, all that?
And that's what you think anyway.
That's what you're thinking at that point, right? So you're immediately like, man, this is kind of a whack deal. He's got to deal with the parents, being these, quote, liberal white folks. But they ain't so liberal because, they got black people working for them in a subservient role, for a patronizing role.
And then the way that he acknowledges it, the dad acknowledges that image, how the optics look for that. Mm-hmm. Even the way that he approached that are to me solidified that that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was he was the typical white liberal.
I voted for Obama twice,
and I would have voted for him a third time. Yeah, so he was playing that role.
That's basically
that's basically the new I have a black friend. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting as well. I want to touch on how, to me, the theme of it, if you take out strictly race, it was the idea of being an outsider and how you navigate in that environment. And there was a quote that I heard on another podcast. I'm not going to name because they got more listeners than me. So, but they brought up this James Baldwin quote, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't know it by verbatim. But the idea behind it was when he used to watch cowboy and Indian movies, he was cheering for the Cowboys to win until one day he realized he was the Indian. Mm-hmm. He's the minority, and he's been rooting against himself in these movies his whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring that up. That reminds me of an Oscar Brown Jr. song, right? The Lone Ranger and Tonto, right? Yeah. And there's this scene where Lone Ranger and Tonto are surrounded, right, by Indians or Native Americans, right? So the Lone Ranger looks at Tonto and says, "Hey, we're surrounded." And Tonto looks at the Lone Ranger and says, "What do you mean we, pale face?" So it's kind of that's the moment of reckoning, that you realize whose side you're really supposed to be on. And, for a lot of, I didn't like John Wayne, although, I liked Heroes, but I didn't like him as a character. And, the whole idea of the white hero conquering the West, manifest destiny, basically rounding up the Indians. My favorite movie was They Died with Their Boots On, right? Which was the Custer movie, right? Errol Flynn and
that's the one.
And those guys get massacred, by the Sioux. I said, they had it coming. About time. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, and the fact that this movie kind of plays on, these notions of white superiority in a way, right? Not, overtly, but by inference.
And the reason why I brought up that quote, and the reason why that quote by James Baldwin came to mind is, I noticed myself when I was in the movie theater, and something that Jordan Peele said himself is that this movie should be seen in theaters. And I agree with him based on, I saw the movie and then I saw that quote by him, and I was like, I thought about it in my head. How would I have received this movie if I saw it by myself at the house versus if I saw it in the theaters? I still think I would like it, but I think something that I did feel and that I did notice myself is prior to the movie starting, I surveyed the scene, the audience. And you see, especially being in California, interracial couples, black couples, Latino couples, Filipino couples, you see this mixed race and as well as mixed genders, mixed families and all this. And then when the movie started, you also felt the energy and the tension moving through the audience. At least that I felt. There are certain scenes that I found, hilarious, and there was a certain section of the crowd that had that same energy. And in other areas, there was a change in energy, but at the end, as well as towards the end, the crowd all rooting for a black hero, in essence, Chris, and wanting the white villain, which is something we see very few in movies and culture, wanting them to be killed, and all of them agreeing with that same sentiment. I just thought it was an interesting, because that's probably very few times that they experience what I was just talking about, them rooting for themselves to lose. And so that's why I brought that up.
Well, there's a real horror movie, Night of the Living Dead, right?
I know where you're going with this,
right? There's a brother in the movie who has a lead role, right? He's actually the hero of the movie, and he's got to deal with white folks who ain't up to the task, and he's got to keep them in line. Right?
They don't like him because he's black,
and they backstab him because he's black and all this stuff, right? And he prevails, right? He goes through the whole movie, he prevails. And I know Peele was playing off of this at the end, right? Because at the end, the hero, the protagonist, he's prevailed, right? He's killed, his white family there, and all of the the quote kind of zombie like creatures that are there too, and he's about to realize his victory, and then the car comes up, right? The police car comes up. Now jump back 40 years ago or whatever it is, 50 years ago, 40 years probably. Night of the Living Dead. This brother holds fort against this army of zombies. He's killing them. He's setting the plans. He gets everybody through the stuff. And then finally in the morning, when the cavalry arrives to rescue everybody, he's standing up there like, hey, yeah, we're finally safe. And they shoot him right through the head, throw him on the pile with the rest of the zombies. To me, that was a very profound statement in that film. And, it was left up to the viewer to decide whether he was shot because they thought he was a zombie or they shot him just because he was black.
And all the white people died, so we can't have him survive.
Yeah, but the white people died at the hands of the zombies,
yeah.
Right? Right. He died, call it friendly fire or whatever you want. So Peele, I'm sure, was playing on that in Get Out, right?
Because that's initially when I saw that cop car, I was like, oh damn.
Yeah, I said okay.
I think everyone in the theater
everybody
thought
knew that.
They just knew. Oh,
Yeah,
we finna get shot
the,
in. That's the cop that stopped them earlier, and you just knew who it was going to be.
And then when
You got
Lil
this
Rel guy came
blonde
out,
white girl there bleeding. Oh, help me. This black man's gone berserk, killed my whole family. And then his homeboy.
I actually may have liked that ending.
I did like it.
I mean, I would have liked that ending better if they had shot him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I didn't want him to die, but that would have been like a wow moment. At the end of that, then he gets out and the white cop shoots this black guy. It would have been like,
but you know
that's
what?
a statement.
But you know what? The
statement.
fact that it didn't happen, I think,
I
had
think
a
it's
bigger
more a statement
impact.
because we all because that's the thing.
Because we were expecting it.
If
we were
if we expected
anticipating
it
that.
and it happened, it's not a shot. If we are expecting him to get shot and he didn't, it's like that's what we're talking about it now because he didn't.
It wouldn't have been a shock, but it would have been a statement on America.
But it was still a statement. Even though it
that you
didn't
thought
happen,
it was going to happen.
right?
The statement
Because
that you thought it was going to happen.
The suggestion was there. Everybody knew that was in their
happen.
heads. That was what was going to
Because
happen.
to me, it makes a bigger statement because the fact that we're thinking about it and it didn't happen. Because put it this way, back in that time, racism was more overt.
Wait, that back in that time.
When the Night of the Living Dead, when that came,
okay.
you know what
Going
I'm
back
saying?
to-
It was more overt, where you can do something like that and it's not going to be as big of a deal. Where now, even though people are doing it, they're doing more work to hide it because they know how the optics will look in society, and that there will be an uproar. There will be something there will be some repercussions. Even though they're willing to deal with it, there's still going to be them. And so, to me, the fact that we're thinking that and he didn't do it, it shows like how, to me, like you have to be more vigilant. We have to do more work because it's making it harder for us to find, even though it's still occurring. Because if we never thought it, that means it's not occurring. But the fact that everybody in that, well, I won't say everybody, majority of the people in that audience, like we said, are having that thought, that means it's happening enough that it's in our consciousness.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean the whole setup, the white girl, blonde white girl, claiming, violence by a black man out of control, right? That brings up every single shooting, right? Goes all the way back to Emmett Till, right?
Whistling
and
licking,
that situation, right? But you brought up the issue. Peele said you should see this in a theater, right, in a community setting. This brings to mind another movie I saw, right, which was took place in the 1920s. It was called Ragtime.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the way that they marketed that movie, Ragtime, right? James Cagney was in that film, right? And he's making this big comeback, and Cagney was, big in movies back in the day. And he was a Yankee Doodle dandy, and they showed all these scenes with people dancing and having a good time and whatnot. So you thought that Ragtime was going to be about a movie about
the Roaring 20s.
The Roaring 20s and, speakeasies and dancing and jazz and all that stuff. Well, you get to the theater and it's really about a racial event that there was a black man, I think his name was Coalhouse Walker, who was well-to-do, and he had a car, really nice car. And one day he was driving, and these, I think they were firemen or something, had blocked his car so that he couldn't make his way there, right? there was some altercation there, right? And they did something to his car. And that led to a series of events that ended up getting his wife injured, right? She got smacked down because she was trying to petition, I think it was Woodrow Wilson or Teddy Roosevelt or whoever was president at the time, on his behalf. He became the victim, even though he was the victim of this racial event, he was seen as being the perpetrator. And he became the enemy. He became the target of the investigation. He took some hostages. He was just fed up with all the stuff. And he went downtown and he took over, I think, a bank or something like that. And he got hostages. And he said he wanted to, all he wanted was an apology from the fire department for what they did to his car. And subsequently, all the stuff that happened to his wife and whatnot. So you were thinking, okay, he's got a righteous point here, and finally he's got their attention. And James Cagney, who, most cases he was the hero of the film, of all the films he was in, right? He stayed there and he says, okay, well, we'll take care of this. And there's a sniper. So when he comes out, right, he says, okay, we agreed to all your deal. We're going to do this. And he comes out and Cagney gives the order for him to shoot him, and they shoot him down dead. That film I saw in Massachusetts, in Lawrence, Massachusetts, in an audience of mostly white folks. I think I might have been the only brother there. And it was such a shocking end. Plus it was just unexpected, right? You come in there and I think everybody in that movie theater didn't expect this type of movie. And they got there and when it was over, I just sat there. I was just like, I was angry. I was shocked. And all these white folks are getting up and they're walking out and they're not looking at me. You get that, you have that feeling like oh, I can't look at this brother, because that was some wrong stuff that just happened. And it was crystal clear that being a black man in America and being in that theater with all these white folks and seeing the injustice that had happened on that screen was a slap in the face to all of them they didn't want to have. And they kind of wanted to just block it out of their mind, and they didn't want to look at me because they were feeling guilty. So yes, seeing films like this in a community setting, in a theater, gives you that ability to kind of gauge everybody's viewpoint and response to the film. And I think it's very instructive, and it's a lesson in and of itself.
What did you think, Baba Jesse? Would you put it this way? If you saw the movie in theaters,
I did.
Let's say you didn't see it in theaters and you saw it at home, do you think your opinion and your feelings about it would have changed as you were watching it, not versus afterwards?
Probably. I don't think it would have changed as much while I was watching it. Not seeing that audience reaction around me or getting any kind of feeling from them, I might not have felt that it was as impactful as I think it was. But I think for me, I still would have enjoyed it. I think I would have gotten a lot of the same lessons out of it, and maybe even more. And I say this only because if I watched it at home, Netflix or whatever, I might watch it more than once, and I would have gotten more in that way. So for me, I like that communal feeling, especially with a movie like that. Because it was new, had the big buzz around it. So that people are kind of hyped about it to see it. And it was one of the few movies I been in recently that was a full theater. So that was good, because most of the time I'm at the movie, it's not full anymore.
Yeah, when I went to see it, we went on a Monday afternoon. It was maybe 20 people in there.
Okay.
Right.
And so I had the big audience. So yeah, it felt good to, people, it was the interracial, mixed audience, people laughing, there's the group over here talking to the screen still. So, all this stuff going on. So that was a fun thing with this movie.
Now, I have one thing that kind of popped up in my head. Why did this family target black people, right, for this stuff? Anybody, in theory, anybody would do, right?
Not if you're obsessed with the black man or the African man.
And one thing is, it seemed like, because they did it to Georgina. So I think it depends on who was the buyer. That would be my guess, is because that one lady, she got it because she wanted to be with a black man. That's why she was with Andrew. The other guy, he wanted basically so that he can paint like him. So,
but if you look at,
and I think it might be also about the fact that it's easier for them to get the daughter to target. The son was too crazy. He's not going to be pulling any.
No, I'm just talking about the race, right?
Yeah,
because she could have targeted white guys or Chinese guys or
Mexican
Indian guys or Mexican guys.
Not just men. Okay.
And if you notice, there was like this gallery of people, right? They were all black. Right. So one of the things I thought about was that, that this is a devaluation of black people, right?
Right.
In that, okay, we can go off and snatch a black person and transform them and it won't matter, right? Because they don't have no family. Nobody cares about them.
Nobody's
looking
look for them.
You see this in the media all the time, right? Some white woman disappears, right?
Just like now in DC, there's 24 women that are missing.
24, in the DC area, right?
In the DC area, and
it's like a shrug.
When one white girl goes missing for a week, it's national news.
So look, Eric Benet Ramsey. 20 years later, they still got full court press on that, right? Little black girl from
North Carolina,
keep running Mississippi, right? She gets missing. Nobody cares. It's no. But I think that's the point. If you look at Homeboy in the movie, right? His mom had passed away, Chris, right? So he was basically on his own. He didn't have a family,
and he didn't have a large family or friend circle.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember his.
And the first brother who was abducted. Andrew. Yeah, he knew him too. He kind of disappeared and it was like, no big deal. The police didn't even pay much attention to.
Yeah, he had a missing persons report, but that's it. But nobody was actively looking.
And I think that's a very important message that this film was also conveying, was that black folks don't matter in terms of the legal system.
Yeah,
if they disappear, nobody really cares.
But they do matter when it comes to that scene when Chris is first there and how they're all talking about, do you play with Tiger or do you golf? Really pushing all the physical attributes.
And I think that was a big part of it. I agree. They're saying, it doesn't matter. We can grab a black person and get away with it. But it was also, I think, that infatuation with black people.
Yeah.
All the myths about, because at the garden party or the yard party, everyone's talking about all these great things about the black people. She wanted him because he's a sex slave or whatever, however you want. That's what a TSA boy thought it was. Like. Everything's about sex slaves, but so it was just showing that thing, and especially a lot of these so-called liberal white Americans, I believe, and I think Jordan Peele may have been trying to say this. They have those notions. It's like, we're great friends. Black people are fine. Mexican people are fine. But then deep down, there's this, Mexican people are fine. They're great gardeners. Black people are good. I mean, they have this great athletic ability or whatever. So I think that's
they keep us in
stereotypes.
They keep us in a box. Back to that same party when Chris was like, "No, I don't play golf. I take photos."
Yeah.
Oh, so what about golf? You want to go golfing sometime? Because they can't get out of that idea that you don't fit in that box that they created for you, and so they won't accept anything outside of it. And that's, I felt, what I took from that scene as well. That garden party. One thing I do want to touch on is Betty Gabriel, Georgina. I think she did a great job, a great acting job of capturing that. Because once you find out how the hypnotizing works and about the second place and how she captured that somebody's in there trying to break out, but is not able to, and they haven't been able to, and they're trying to warn you, but they can't. Like that, how she captured that with, again, another podcast said this, I'm not going to say, but they called it the reverse glory tear.
The reverse
glory tear.
When she cried at that scene with Chris, when he asked her about the charger or unplugging his phone. I just thought she did a really good job, and I wanted to just mention that and put it out there that acting was very, very well done.
Yeah, she had a really good, way of, being ambiguous, right, in a very suspenseful way.
Yeah,
right.
Because she didn't have a lot of lines, but she was memorable.
Yeah. I mean, you knew something was going on with her, but it was.
But so was Walter, as you mentioned earlier. He's the same to me. He was the same kind of a.
Yeah, that's
thing.
why
I mean, it was
both of them. I mean, you Andrew.
running up on him.
They were-
that,
Walter, yeah, that,
I saw something on Police Report. They were doing the
Get Out
Get
Challenge?
Out challenge. It's like would you stand there and have somebody just full bore sprint at you?
Nope.
Get out the way.
I was gonna say one thing. Speaking of Georgina and Walter, just again that spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it. Then I don't
If
know
you
what's
haven't
wrong
seen it,
with
you shouldn't be listening to this podcast.
Yeah, it's too late now.
The whole thing
They
about
heard too much.
This is worse than
them
Oprah when
being
Oprah's
their
previewing
parents,
movies.
them being the grandparents.
Yeah.
Ah,
That was like
That
whoa.
freaked me
I'm
out.
like-
Yeah.
We said, "Go get him, Grandpa." And he took off around. Like,
yeah, he's
whoa.
gone.
That was just a nice little twist. Something.
Now, what do you think this movie said about interracial dating?
That's what I was gonna. That was another question I had.
Don't ever go meet the parents. No, I mean, it didn't. What did it say about interracial dating?
I want to this Andrea, a girl that I had on the or a woman I should say that I had on this podcast before. She brought up something that takes me to what you were saying because we talked about interracial dating, and to me it spoke to what she said that there are, of course, but I didn't think about it. But there's people that fantasize about being with a black man, being with a white woman, being with whatever race you can think of. And to me, that's what it spoke on, is that idea of that fetishizing or
objectification of the other. Right?
yeah, exactly.
Right. So they're not really people. They're
exactly.
they're
It
objects.
touched on that from the interracial dating perspective of her because if you noticed at that scene that we see them looking over her shoulder at the computer, is she's looking up basketball players, NCAA top recruits, things of that nature. So it's in her mind is that athletic thing.
Yeah.
Saying that aspect of there's not, there's more depth to us than just this, that, or whatever.
Now, do you think Chris had any objectification
of her?
of her?
I don't think there was enough evidence in the movie to suggest it, but there's nothing to say that he did it.
Right, and what you were saying about her and looking up the black men and all this, I don't know that says so much about interracial dating as to the nature of that weird family's obsession and what they were doing. Because I mean, just in general,
because then my thing is, why was she looking at that specific type of men?
Because that's what they wanted for what they were doing to people. She's looking at the next, who's going to be the next person that I can, in my mind, I thought she's searching men down.
I take it that, because to me, if she was just searching just men, black men in general, or black men, because you can be athletic and not be in NCAA, you know what I'm saying? Like there's other ways to narrow that search down.
But maybe someone wanted that. I mean, 'cause she wasn't I don't see them as an interracial couple. She was that was a ploy that she was doing. So for me, that's what I mean.
Initially they were
Yeah,
before
but-
we knew what was going on, right?
From his perspective, at least from his perspective, it was.
From before we knew that he was in trouble being with her, I don't think they said much about interracial dating to me, other than
Except the homeboy TSA told him, "Don't be going home. Don't meet the parents."
And that's a black person's mentality thinking there.
But it did speak to interracial dating. The fact that they even have to bring up the fact that when he's going to visit her parents, that he has that she mentioned that he's black. You don't have to do that if you're a black man dating a black woman.
Yeah,
you don't have that conversation.
Yeah, they had that discussion, right?
Yeah, you don't have that conversation.
That discussion about
that
did you
is
tell them that I'm
something
black?
specific.
So what
She
did
said,
that say
no.
about interracial dating then? The fact that he said, man, don't be going to meet their family.
What it said is
when
that
Chris
there's
and homegirl had the discussion. Because
And
he
Rose.
asked her, did you tell them that I'm black? And she said no. And he's like, maybe you should. And she's like, no, they're real liberal.
My point is, you don't have to
they
have
love
that
Obama.
conversation if you're with a black woman. If you're not in an interracial relationship.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that's an added thing that they did.
But they
address.
added to it. But I don't think I understand what you're saying, how that in the movie, and you don't have that if it's this couple of the same race. But I didn't see, just because, and maybe because, as the movie goes on, you realize this is not a couple. This is a Mark and then she's reeling them in, whatever. So to me, it wasn't so much on interracial dating. And if I'm dating a black woman and I'm getting ready to go meet the parent, I'm probably gonna ask some questions. I might say, well, did you tell them I was a musician? Because they might have something against musicians, especially if I don't have another job or whatever.
Yeah,
So
but-
for me, that wasn't. I mean, that was kind of normal. I mean, anybody that would. I don't think it was a comment on interracial dating, just a comment on the society.
Well, this is what I'll say is I'm in an interracial relationship, and when I went to meet her parents, that didn't come across my mind is that she needs to let them know.
Well, it's different, right? She's Puerto Rican.
Yeah, but
right, and that's a melting pot. Everybody in Puerto Rico got a little bit of everything, right? So it's not as trippy as WASP America, right?
But that's what I'm saying. But that's why I'm saying that it is an added thing in that particular relationship because of the dynamics that those two cultures have. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. Like you do, if you like I said, if he's dating a Puerto Rican, if he's dating Latino, maybe an Asian, whatever culture, you might not have to have that conversation because of the relationship.
True.
And so that's what I'm saying. So they did address it, but maybe not to the extent that you think that I interpreted that you're
right. And I could see a black and white couple not addressing that. I don't think everyone is going to approach it like that. Because first of all, she might have already told the parents. He might know it. Just feel comfortable enough. I don't know if I would have done that.
I would have.
I might have just wanted to go surprise them just because I'm just crazy like that, though. I would just be like, "Hi, I'm here," but no. I mean, I don't.
It's interesting because you talk about what you might do in that situation, and you have that similar situation, and I'm thinking, I've never been in that situation, and I never even kind of got close to being in that situation, and I went to basically a predominantly white college, right? And it never really crossed my mind. Right. I never really was. Maybe it was self regulating in a way, right? That I wasn't gonna be doing that. I think it definitely was an aspect of this story. I don't know. Let's say it wasn't a racial thing. I think it would have taken a lot of the steam out of this film, right? Because I think the fact that all of the victims in this movie were black, and that they were being targeted by, white folks who were affluent and, seemingly liberal. I think he was also pointing fingers at, the so-called white liberals who are, claim not to be racist, right?
I'm sure that was,
that they harbor some racist ideas themselves.
That they harbor some racist, as well as, to me, it also spoke to the fact that you're allowing it to continue as well because
they're exploiting it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not what they say. You know what I'm saying?
No.
So, but I'm saying so they feign ignorance. But I think, like you said, I think he's saying that you can't really feign that anymore because everybody at that party knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because when you first hear that party, when you first see that party, you're like, this is weird, and then when you start to find out what's really going on. You don't really realize how deep it goes, and then you see the auction, and you go, "That's the whole town."
They're auctioning off
the whole community.
That was built around that lady and her ability to.
They're auctioning off a black man, just like they auctioned off slaves back in the day. No different.
Yeah, he was definitely making that.
But they're exploiting, and as well as the fact that he was like the guy that bid on him, saying, "I want him because of his talent." And so that's the exploit. We're not picking cotton anymore.
Yeah, we're exploiting them
for their other talents. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How well they play basketball, how athletic they are, how well they sing, how influential they are on the culture.
Yeah, and I see that same way. I see that as the film pointing out how the white majority culture, basically colonizes black culture,
cultural appropriation,
right? Takes it. Right, and tries to make it their own, right, and exploits it to their own benefit.
As somebody coined the term, culture vultures.
Yeah,
culture vultures. Yeah. I like that.
It's a different form of colonization, right, where you extract all of the natural resources and value, right, and you give back nothing. Suck it dry.
And there you have it, America.
I know, the vulture. America eats its young.
We went a lot of places on this podcast. I'll say let's conclude it by saying, would you recommend this to others? Do you think this is one of those movies that everybody should see?
Yes, I have recommended it to several people, several white people, even my coworkers that haven't seen it. I've recommended it to them. my family, people back when I first saw it. So yeah, I think people should see it. The communal thing is great. If you miss it, make sure you get it on Netflix, but you should see it. And again, it's just a movie. It's, horror, suspense, thriller, whatever you want to call it. It's a movie, but there are some things that you should think about in this movie.
And actually, before we do conclude, I do want to bring up one more thing: the sunken place. I feel like we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't bring that up. The significance of the sunken place and
of the what place?
Sunken place.
The sunken place.
Oh, where she sent him the whole.
When
she
she-
sent
Oh
him
yeah.
to?
Uh-huh.
To me, that spoke volumes in the feeling of, actually, let me tie it to music because every podcast has to be tied to music some way. It brings me to an interview that Kanye had with Sway. And he's talking about trying to get into the fashion industry and trying to be at the point where he's like Saint Laurent, where he can have his creations and be made mass production and have that kind of grip on fashion. Sway was asking him, well, why can't you do it? You have the money, you sell these records, so you have the influence, these people, so you have the network. Like, what is stopping you? And Kanye was like, Sway, you don't have the answers. I'm telling you, there's things beyond all of that you can have all of that and you still can't do what you want to do. You are pigeonholed. You are stuck. You can't. And to me, the way I took that interview and the way I'm taking the sunken place is, there's points where you feel no matter how good or how great or how hard you work, how much money you have, how much influence you have, there's a cap. And that cap is because you're black. Where if you're white, you can have all these resources, you can have all this stuff, and you don't have a cap. The universe is your oyster. You can accomplish that. Where if you're a black man, regardless of the fact that we do have more black people that have more money, but we still don't have majority the NBA owners. There's one. NFL, the same thing, but we have all these NFL players that have millions, that have influence, but they still can't get that. So that means, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a cap. And that's one of the things I took from the second place is just that inability, as well as just in everyday life, there's certain things that as a black man, you can't say. And if you say it a certain way, it's going to be taken a certain way.
Yeah.
That feeling of, I want to express myself just like just the freedom that white privilege affords you.
Yeah, and the fact that it was, induced by hypnosis, right? Is an indication that this is something that the majority culture inculcates in black folks, right? To set the threshold or the limit of what they can do by creating this feeling of helplessness, this feeling of not being able to achieve, right? To going to that place, right? Because that's what the majority culture has been doing, right? For centuries, trying to diminish, the outlook for, people of color. So that's a very good point to bring up.
I agree with what you're both saying. I mean, I hadn't given that much thought about that, other than the fact he was being put in this place, sort of a place of fear. He, trying to get out, you can't get out, and just being held down. So I hadn't taken it as far as the thought you had given it, but I do agree with what you're both saying about that sunken place and that fear.
And that's why a lot of people were cheering when he broke that teacup, because that was the method that she was using to hypnotize. So if you can break out of that cycle, then your bounds are limitless.
But you have to realize that you are being hypnotized. That's the key.
You got to realize that you have been, hypnotized.
And so, to me, that was, I think that was one of the pivotal scenes for me was that second place, because it just, that feeling, especially for me professionally, I can relate to that feeling of being stifled, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And just that feeling of hopelessness that he's in there, and as everything is black, but you can see what's going on. You're still part of the world, but you're not in it.
You have no control.
Yeah, no control. Like, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. No matter how much you scream, no matter how much you fight, you're still going to be in that same place. And there's a lot of people not outside of race, just when it comes to economic structure as well, that same feeling. Like, you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have the capital to fund it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Or just, the confidence that it's a viable that it's a possibility
that you can do
right?
it.
That you can that you can actually do those.
Yeah, that you can accomplish it.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it there.
Get out.
Let you ponder that. I want to say thank you to Baba Jesse and Uncle David. I think this was a very good conversation. I hope it spurs other conversations amongst other people. Please leave us a comment, a like. Let us know what you think about it. Let us know what you think about Get Out, what you took the Sunken Place as, just how you felt about the movie. If you felt you would have liked it better if you watched it at home or if you liked it in theaters. I want to say thank you to Jordan Peele if you happen to listen to this. I think you did a great movie. And
Jordan.
I'm happy to hear that he has been commissioned to do 5 more, a series. He says he has a couple of more, I think 5 more actually movies that would play off these social and racial, well, not racial, but social stereotypes in other areas. Mm-hmm. So
I'm just going to add for Jordan. I'm just glad you got your cat back.
Keanu. So again, thank you for listening to another Stay Woke podcast. Give us a like, give us a listen, and you know our motto, live, listen to some great music. And for this podcast, I'll add, watch some great movies, and above all, love more. We out.
Peace.